Hi everybody, very welcome to Mentour and yet another video podcast. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Today on the video, guys, we're going to be talking about turbulence. What is it? What causes it? And what do we, the pilots up in the front, do about it when it occurs? Stay tuned.
Wind 31016, third one right, third one right.
Third one, 31 right. Delta 260. Produced.
This video is brought to you in cooperation with brilliant.org. Now, if you are like me, you didn't really enjoy the math lessons and the physics lessons in school. Well, now there is help for you. If you check out brilliant.org, the 500 first of you who uses this link here below will get 20% off the annual fee with Brilliant, and they will make learning maths and physics and solving problems really fun and interactive. So check it out. Right guys, I have really looked forward to making this episode because I know that there's a lot of you guys out there who might be nervous flyers, and I know that the number one reason that you are nervous is because of turbulence. So in this episode today, I'm going to be talking about what causes turbulence, whether or not it's dangerous, and what we, the pilots up in the front, do in case we encounter turbulence under different circumstances. So, there are different types of turbulence. There are turbulence that are caused by surface friction and the air moving around obstacles and over mountains, for example. This is called mechanical turbulence, and you will often feel this when you're taking off during really windy conditions, right? So if you're taking off from an airport that is close to, for example, a mountain range, like here in Girona, we're close to the Pyrenees behind me. Or there might be a lot of buildings or a city very close by. Well then, as the air is moving over these obstacles, the air kind of, it's similar to a fluid. So if you've been looking at a stream that's flowing around a rock, you know that the water will be flowing around the rock, and after it, it would create some vortices. Now the air will do exactly the same thing. So if the air is moving over a large obstacle, like a mountain range, for example, those vortexes might be causing turbulence to quite high altitude. Most of the cases when we're talking about surface friction turbulence, it's only for maybe a couple of hundred to a couple of thousand feet, and after that it gets smoother again. But this is very prevalent, especially during windy conditions, and that's the kind of turbulence that you'll come across most of the case. When you get up into the higher part of the atmosphere, it's always very windy up there, but it's not always turbulent, and we'll get to that in a second. Now, the next type of turbulence that I'm sure that you have all come across is the turbulence that you experience when you climb into a cloud mass. Not all clouds will cause turbulence. The clouds that tend to cause turbulence are the convective ones. By convective, I mean that the clouds are being formed by the sun heating up the earth. Now, when it gets hot enough, it would release like a bubble of air. And inside of that, there's a lot of moisture. Now, as hot air is going up and climbing up to the atmosphere, it will slowly and surely get colder. All right, colder and colder as it gets higher. At a certain point, it will reach its dew point, which is where it will turn from water vapor into water droplets, and that's when you see clouds forming. Right, when it does that, if you know your physics, then you know that as the water vapor is turning into water droplets, it will all of a sudden release energy. That means that when it does that inside of the cloud formation, you will get some turbulence. Okay, it's caused both by the movement of the air, the actual updraft inside of the cloud, and also by that release of energy inside of the cloud. So this means that these nice kind of cotton-looking clouds that you'll see during the summer, they might actually cause quite a bit of turbulence, from light to moderate turbulence. But it's not dangerous, right? Not in any way. But there is a type of cloud that can cause turbulence that is actually dangerous, and that is its bigger cousin, the cumulonimbus cloud, CB cloud. Now, a CB cloud is essentially a small cumulus cloud that has continued to grow. right? It might be because of the atmosphere being very unstable. That will help the cloud formation to continue to grow. Or there might be a lot of heat, or there might be a lot of moisture, and a combination of that can cause a small cumulus cloud to become a small cumulus cloud to become a large cumulonimbus cloud. And what you will see then is a cloud that looks a little bit like a mushroom, right? It will continue to grow, very dark normally, and at the top it will kind of spread out and look a little bit like cotton candy, because at the top it tends to be down to minus 56 degrees Celsius, or even colder than that, and it causes ice crystals to form. And when that happens, there will be loads of hot air being sucked up through the cloud. It will cool down at the top, and it will then start falling down, and you get a lot of movement of the air inside of the cloud. Those clouds are dangerous, and aircraft are not supposed to fly inside of them. If they do, we might come across extreme turbulence, which might actually cause problems with the structure of the aircraft. So the good thing with these clouds is that they also have a lot of moisture inside of them. And when you have a lot of moisture, it means that our weather radar will be able to detect them. So as we're flying around, we have our weather radar on, we'll be able to see these clouds very clearly. They tend to be very small in geographical spread, so they're very local, but very high. But it also means that it's fairly easy to avoid them. And if we can't avoid them, let's say that there are several of them, they can also be caused by a frontal movement. So if cold air is coming in and it's pushing up hot, moist air, they can also cause these clouds. And then you can get what we call a squall line, which is a lot of these cumulonimbus clouds in a row. But if we can't pass it, and if we can't avoid it, we're just going to be turning around, landing somewhere else, diverting to a different airport. And that's because we never take the risk of flying into a cumulonimbus cloud. Okay? So that's CB clouds, and they can be dangerous. I've talked about them in a different episode as well. You can check that out up here. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is clear air turbulence. A clear air turbulence is a little bit different because it doesn't have moisture in it. It can appear, we're just flying along, you don't see anything, there's nothing on the weather radar, and all of a sudden it starts to be bumpy. Clear air turbulence can be formed either on the side of a cumulonimbus cloud, because the cumulonimbus cloud, the storm cloud, is actually disturbing the air, and that can cause clear air turbulence even if you're not in contact with the cloud itself. It can be caused by what we talked earlier about mountain ranges. So the air could be pushed from one side of the mountain range going over it, and then causing big rotor kind of vortices on the opposite side. Now, normally, if you see these beautiful looking lenticularis clouds that looks almost like UFOs, that is an indication of these rotors being present. So even though they look very docile and nice, those clouds, it is an indication that it could be really, really dangerous in connection to them. But the most common type of clear air turbulence is the one that is associated with jet streams. Now, in order to understand jet streams, you need to start, first of all, you need to pay attention on your physics class. And once again, if you haven't, you should definitely check out brilliant.org, okay? Because the jet streams are, picture it like a tunnel of air that is stretching from west to east. And inside of that tunnel, you have air that's moving at incredible speeds, as in 100, 150 knots, 300 kilometers per hour. These tunnels they don't stretch for very high altitude, only maybe a couple of thousand feet, but they can be thousands of nautical miles long and tens to hundreds of nautical miles wide as well. When you have air that is moving at these incredible speeds inside of this little tunnel, that air will be kind of rubbing up against the air outside, which is not moving at a high speed. And that will also cause these vortices to happen. So when we are at our planning stage, we will go in and we will look at our significant weather charts that we get from the Met Office. And in there, we will see what or where these jet streams are and whether or not they're associated with clear air turbulence. Now, normally the clear air turbulence area is very big, so we only know that there's a likelihood that we will come across it. It's not sure. We don't know exactly where it is. This is why when you're out flying and it all of a sudden start to be bumpy, then the belts come on. That's because we are actually reacting to it. But what we can do is we can listen to other aircraft that are out flying for so-called PREPs, pilot reports. When they encounter turbulence, they will call into air traffic control and say, listen, we have light to moderate turbulence at flight level 350, 35,000 feet at this location. Then air traffic control can go out and tell all of the others that didn't, if they weren't listening or is coming later on into the frequency, that listen, there's been turbulence reported in your area. We can put the belts on. That way we can make sure that you guys are sitting down, your seat belts on, and are as protected as possible. Okay? Clear air turbulence can range from very mild, very light turbulence to severe turbulence in some very, very rare occasions. But it is caused by jet streams in most occasions. Okay? Good. So those are the kind of normal meteorological turbulences that you might come across. Now, there's also something called wake turbulence. And wake turbulence is a slightly different thing. Wake turbulence is actually caused by big, large aircraft and by the wingtip vortices. Okay, when a large aircraft is taking out lift, they do so partially by creating high pressure on the lower part of the wing, and there's a low pressure on the top of the wing. Now, whenever you have that, you will have air trying to escape from the high pressure to low pressure, and that happens at the wingtips, and that causes these kind of vortices that stretches out from the wingtips. You can see it sometimes when you look up and you see one of these contrails. If you're close to them, if you're actually flying, you'll see when it's close to the aircraft that they are actually forming like tunnels, and those are the vortexes. Now, those vortexes are especially dangerous during approach and during takeoff, because that's when the aircraft is taking out the maximum amount of lift at lower speed, and that's when the vortexes are bad. But they're also quite significant at altitude. So a vortex from a large aircraft like an Airbus 380 or a Boeing 757, they're famous for that, could flip a smaller aircraft upside down. And it's happened on a few occasions where some smaller business jets have actually been flipped over by vortexes. Now we have to look out for these, and air traffic control is quite good at maintaining good separation both in time and in altitude between different aircraft in order to avoid these vortexes. But what they do is they fall. All right? When a vortex has been created, it starts falling behind the aircraft, and it falls at a speed of about 400 nautical miles per minute. So this means that when I am flying and I see on my traffic, my TCAS screen, that there's another aircraft that has passed my flight path about 1,000 feet above and about 2 minutes ahead, in that case I know that there's a likelihood that the vortexes from that aircraft has fallen down into my path, and I can ask either for a turn or I can ask for a climb from air traffic control or something to avoid it. In most cases though, it's not too bad. 737 is a fairly big aircraft. So what I do is I just put on the belt sign, make sure, to tell people that there might be a sudden bump, because they're very localized. So it's only going to be a short, short bump. Okay? So how do we characterize the different types of turbulence or the different levels of turbulence then? Well, we have a scale ranging between light turbulence, moderate, severe and extreme. Okay, and how a specific aircraft is going to react to turbulence is going to be decided by the pilots on board. All right, so what can be moderate turbulence for a Boeing 737 could well be severe or even extreme turbulence to a Cessna or smaller aircraft. So not all turbulence is equal depending on aircraft type. But what you could say is that light turbulence is that kind of everyday turbulence that you might encounter when you're out flying, right? You passengers, you would definitely react to it, say that, right, it's a bit turbulent today, but it doesn't form any changes in pitch or altitude or heading for the aircraft itself, and the aircraft is fully under control. Now, moderate turbulence is a step up on that. That's when it starts to be really bumpy. That's probably when you start hearing people kind of moan or even scream sometimes inside of the cabin. But it's still very moderate changes in both altitude, attitude and heading. Okay, and it's fully under control still. But it's likely that if, those stories that you've heard from your friends, or maybe you've even told others that you had this horrible, really severe, bad turbulence on the flight, that's likely to be moderate. Okay. Severe turbulence. Now, with severe turbulence, you're going one step up, and that's when you might start to have actual problems controlling the aircraft in certain, from time to time. It's not completely out of control, but from time to time you can have problems controlling the aircraft. You will have changes in airspeed, in attitude, altitude, potentially, not much, but a little bit, and you might have problems reaching autopilot panels or even reading instruments. That's severe. Extreme turbulence. In extreme turbulence, then the aircraft will be partially or completely out of control. It will be tossed around like a little piece of wood inside of a storm. You might encounter forces, G-forces that actually could cause damage to the aircraft structure. So extreme turbulence is very dangerous. But extreme turbulence is normally only found inside of the core of really bad thunderstorms. During my 18 years of flying, I have never been even close to extreme turbulence. I have had severe turbulence for a few seconds once, but what I do come across quite regularly is light to moderate turbulence. So those are the kind of levels. But what do we do then? What do pilots do? Well, I already mentioned that during the planning stage, we will check through our MET data that we get. It's going to come with SIGMETs, which is significant MET data for the entire route that we're about to fly. That will tell us about things like, for example, thunderstorms on the route, severe turbulence, even moderate turbulence, and icing. We also have a significant weather chart, and the significant weather chart will show us in a pictorial way where the jet streams are, where the clear air turbulence is expected to be, and things like this. Now, as we get airborne, we have a few things that we do. The first thing that we will always do with any type of turbulence is put the belts on, because turbulence in itself is not very dangerous, right? We don't see it as a dangerous thing, but we do know that you, the passengers, need to be strapped in, because if the turbulence do get bad, that's how you're going to hurt yourself, by being thrown around or by you falling on top of someone else or having things falling onto you. So belts on, okay? Then we also consider reducing our speed, and that's because we want to have as much margin as possible in between the high speed stall of the aircraft and the low speed stall of the aircraft. And we also want to, there is a specific design speed where the turbulence will give less stress to the airframe. In the case of the 737, we tend to keep 250 knots below flight level 100. As we climb above flight level 100, we keep a speed of 280 knots indicated, until we climb high enough for the Mach number to be significant. In that case, it's Mach 0.76. So 280 knots or Mach 0.76. That's when we're climbing. Now, as we're climbing now as well, with that speed, seatbelt sign is on. If the turbulence starts to become moderate or severe, we also put the start switches on. That's to provide continuous ignition to the engines, so that the turbulence that might disturb the airflow coming into the engines is not going to actually have them flame out. It's very low risk of that, believe me, but we do it anyway. And we also go into our flight management computer to the N1 limit page, and we select max continuous thrust. That's so that we have available the full range of the engine. In case the turbulence would start to decrease our airspeed, we know that the engine can go full forward into the max continuous thrust, which is the maximum thrust that we can use for a prolonged period of time. Right? So we're climbing away down there. The belts on, start switch is continuous, max continuous thrust is set, climbing away at this speed. We're also obviously talking to our traffic control, listening where, at what level there might be less or more turbulence, because turbulence tends to be very localized. It could be really turbulent at 33,000 feet and no turbulence at all at 35,000 feet. When you get up to cruise level, well, then it's not going to be a turbulence penetration speed anymore. If we encounter severe turbulence there, first of all, we'll try to get out of it. But if we're stuck at, say, 35,000 feet, it's severe turbulence. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that the aircraft keeps its attitude correct and keeps its thrust set. All right? We don't want them to be constantly moving, and we don't want it to chase its altitude, because that's going to change the airspeed too much. So what we do then is we go into the cruise page. Now, the cruise page in the FMC is always the page that the pilot flying has up in cruise. On there, you will have a turbulence penetration N1 setting. That's the N1 setting that will give safe operation for the engines. You see that? Disconnect the auto throttle, we set that speed. And then, in order to not chase the altitude, we will degrade the autopilot mode from altitude hold in command mode, which we normally use. We would choose control wheel steering pitch. Control with steering pitch is a very simple autopilot mode, and basically what it does is it maintains the attitude that we've set. If we set 5 degrees pitch up, it will maintain that. Put 5 degrees pitch down, it will maintain that. Or if we turn, it will just keep the bank angle that we set. That's what it does. So in severe turbulence, we set whatever attitude that we have in order to maintain the altitude. Approximately, it's going to be a 2.5, 3 degrees pitch up. Thrust is set, and then we let the altitude vary. That's just to make sure that the aircraft keeps flying. Okay? We will also have to tell air traffic control that we are unable to maintain our altitude due to severe turbulence, and then we will do whatever we can to get out of this turbulence. So when does it become dangerous then? And in what way? Well, like I've mentioned a few times already, turbulence in itself is not seen like something dangerous by us. It's not dangerous for the aircraft design, for the kind of structural integrity of the aircraft, unless you get into extreme turbulence inside of a cumulonimbus cloud, or you're being flipped over by induced turbulence, by wake turbulence. No, the turbulence that you come across normally, the danger it poses is for people that's walking around in the cabin. So out of the hundreds of millions of passengers who's traveling by air every year, there's only maybe a couple of hundred or 100 to 200 injuries every year caused by turbulence. And those injuries tend to be people walking about, suddenly entering turbulence and being thrown up into the roof of the aircraft, hitting their head and damaging their neck, or they could get hot coffee being poured over them by mistake, or a trolley could fall and injure someone's leg. So out of those 100, maybe say 100 people that gets injured every year, about 50% of them are cabin crew. Because the cabin crew are the ones that are always out walking around in the aisles, those are the most subjected to that kind of turbulence. This is why we, as soon as we hear about potential severe turbulence or moderate turbulence, we put the belts on, and if it gets bad, the cabin crew are trained to return to the seats when they feel that it's not safe to continue to work. But I can also lift my PA mic and call number 1, or cabin crew, return to your seats. The cabin crew will then stop what they're doing, stow the trolley, stow everything, sit down, put their seatbelts on, and they will wait until I give them the clear signal to continue to work again. Now that's very important, and it's something that I have responsibility of doing, but also they need to take some responsibility in doing. But as you can see, this is not, when people are thinking that I'm afraid of flying because of turbulence, they're thinking about the wings cracking off or the engines falling off or something like that. This is not what's going to happen. The aircraft will continue to fly, but make sure that when the belt is on, you put your seatbelts on, you keep it on, and even if there's no turbulence, if you're sitting in your seat, you should have your seatbelt loosely fastened anyway. So that's it, guys. That's what I had about turbulence. If you have more questions about this, continue to send in the questions below. And also, get into the Mentour Aviation app. I've gotten a lot of questions through the app that has helped me to make this episode. And there's loads of discussions about everything that's aviation related in there. You can also, if you have the app, you can go in and you can see some of the training courses that I've done. For example, how to set up a 737 from cold and dark until it's ready to taxi, or the engine failure collection, or TCAS event, Cat 3 approaches, go-arounds, things like that. Okay. The way that those collections works at the moment is that they're filmed in 360. You can take your phone out and you can use your finger and you can swipe around, look around in the cockpit, or you can move your phone around to see the cockpit as well. Or if you really want to feel like you're part of the experience, well then you just get a Google Cardboard headset, you put the phone inside, and it will feel like you're sitting together with me inside of the cockpit when I'm doing these exercises. That's it, guys. Make sure that you have subscribed to the channel, that you have left a like and a comment to the video. And before I go, I want to send a final huge thank you to my long-term sponsor, Brilliant.org. Now, Brilliant.org is a company that I'm really proud of to have part of the channel, because I know that they will provide you with not only the knowledge that you need in order to help you proceed through your ATPL exams or whatever exams that you might be doing which is related to physics or mathematics. I also know that they have a really good and entertaining way of doing so. And if you have a huge problem that they give you, then they will help you to kind of divide it into smaller pieces and solve them individually and solve the whole problem, which is the way that we work in the cockpit as well. This is how we attack bigger problems if we come across them in the cockpit. So one of the things that I think that you guys will enjoy is checking out how a how an active noise cancelling headset actually works. Right? Have you thought about that? How come a Bose, like the one I'm using, the Bose ProFlight headset, which it only has some tiny little earbuds, how come that they can reduce the noise so much that I can use it instead of these big ear cups? Now that's one of the daily problems that Brilliant will give to you. So go in, check it out. The 501st of you who uses this link here below will get a full 20% off the annual fee of Brilliant, but it's completely free to check it out. Have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.